Greetings, cosplayers, LARPers, RPGers, and online gamers. Welcome again to the very best podcast out there in the interwebs, outer webs, and every other thing. This is the Nerdy Old Men Podcast. I am Chad, and this is my good buddy Wes.
Hey everyone, hope you're having a good day, because I know we are, because we're going to be talking about some awesome stuff today. I was thinking about this, Chad.
Yeah, what are we going to do today, Wes?
Awesome sci-fi fantasy shows from our youth, like when we were growing up.
Outstanding.
I got to start off one of my favorites, and I kind of caught it a little bit later on, but was the original Buck Rogers show. I can remember that as a kid.
Buck Rogers.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that was so cool because I myself, don't get me wrong, CGI can make an amazing scene so much better, so much grander, but
Right.
there's something to be said about a guy in a little robot suit running around, and you can actually interact with that person. To me,
Right.
that was great, and that was, for the time, special effects were cutting edge.
Of course, obviously.
Looking back on it now, they're so super cheesy. But as a kid, trying to figure out how they made a lava man walk around, or this little, Twiggy in the little suit, I'm like, how did they do that? And it was, to me,
This is amazing.
it was amazing.
It's the greatest thing ever.
Yes, the model works. Realize that things that you're seeing, it's a trick in the camera, and it's okay. There's this building sitting on this hill, and our heroes are walking up to it, and not realizing that this grand building that you see is a model.
Right.
It's a miniature.
Yeah, and that's that's the kind of thing that piqued piqued our minds and got us thinking about this type of stuff back then, was those old TV shows. And you mentioned Buck Rogers. I hadn't thought about that in years, but I had a toy. I'm a toy guy anyway, but I had a toy
yes.
of a little spaceship, and my memory makes me think that it was from Buck Rogers. Now I can't say for sure, but I think that it was. And at the time, I did stupid stuff, like sometimes I would take a toy to school to play with.
Yes.
And I remember
the
flying
classic error.
Yeah, I remember flying the thing around on the playground, and it was a little ship, and it had two like posts that stuck out the front of it. I don't know if that was it or not, but to me, I remember playing it as if it were Buck Rogers' ship. So I had not thought about that in years until you mentioned this. That's awesome.
So that was a fun show, and like I said, it was I want to say late '70s, but I can remember watching reruns as a kid and just thinking that was the coolest show ever. And boy, how the times have changed.
So was the little robot your favorite character?
I would say it was a tie between Twiggy and Hawk. He was in season 2, I believe. And it was basically, this very stoic man in this black armor, and he had his head, instead of having hair on his head, he had eagle feathers.
Yeah, I remember that guy now. I remember that guy now. Yes.
And I just thought that was the coolest thing, because he was wise, and he was strong, and he was fearless, and he was a great friend and a great warrior, but cool look. I mean, right. Buck was cool, the man out of time, and all the things that Buck can come up with on the fly, but Hawk was just so cool. He looked so different.
Yeah,
I just always thought that was cool as a kid.
Yeah, and that's cool. You love those other secondary, tertiary characters that come into these things.
Well, and, the fact that it's a prosthetic and makeup and things of that
but
nature.
But in the late 70s, though, and they made it kick out that so good. And you're talking about that kind of era, that time frame, one that I always loved. Yes.
Space.
The final frontier.
Yes, sir. Star Trek. That is correct, sir. That is, in fact, what I said. And I remember, man, so the original series, that was out, before our time. But I remember, and some of you that may not be, in fact, old men, may not know of the magical item that is the VHS cassette tape. So,
Power of the VHS.
Yes. And I remember going down to the little video rental store with my dad down where, where Neil's parents owned the cleaners. It was next door.
Family
we were
Video.
kids.
Yes.
Yeah. So we went down there and, Mom and Dad get movies and stuff, but I would always go over and get one of the VHS cassette that had like 3 or 4 episodes of the original Star Trek on it. And I would watch those. And man, I loved that stuff. Trouble with Tribbles, right?
Oh.
The funniest original Star Trek episode. But I loved that stuff. And that piqued my interest in space and, and all the celestial stuff, and I that is just fascinating. And Captain Kirk is still, when I think about who my favorite captain is, man, him and Picard are pretty close.
Yeah.
I liked Kirk's just,
Kirk was a
maverick,
cowboy.
Yeah, maverick,
He was a
fly by the
cowboy.
seat of your pants kind of thing. But I liked Picard's very smooth, level-headedness all the time.
Picard always made the right move, and you didn't know
Right.
if Kirk was going to be able to get out of this alive.
Right, yeah.
I mean-
Kirk's just, the ship's coming back missing half of it all the time because he was just nuts. But Picard, and that was one thing that was a little bit about Picard, is he typically always made the right decision. He didn't fail that much, but Kirk failed all the time.
Picard was smart because he sent Riker down on away missions, and Kirk was like, "Hey, let's take every command officer." And
Well, right,
take them
yeah.
all
So
down.
it makes sense. Kirk went all the time to try to find the ladies because he was the interstellar player, obviously.
Well, and it was such a groundbreaking show.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that I had seen in a documentary was Roddenberry was trying to come up with things that would be real life, applications. And like they had desktop computers, they had storage disk, which, I mean, if you're not an old man like us, kids nowadays don't know what a floppy disk is.
Yes. Yeah, and if I remember right, some of the background computers had big reel-to-reels, or
Yes.
like look like gigantic CDs, like laser discs.
But some of them would have the little data disk. Is the best way I can. And it looked like a floppy disk that you would pop into your computer. And I mean, that was something. This show came out in the '60s, and that was technology that was 20 years away.
Yes, and so interesting that he could, Roddenberry could envision that stuff, right? And I'll tell you one of the coolest freaking things. In my prior job, I had to go to Washington, D.C. quite often, but in the Air and Space Museum, they have the model that they used in the intro to Star Trek. The original.
Oh, the actual ship.
Yes, it's there, and every few minutes it lights up and plays the theme song, and it's the coolest thing because you walk in there and the little kids don't pay attention to it, but then you got all of these old guys standing around it waiting for it to light up. It's such good stuff.
That's neat. And that's something that I think that some of the modern shows have lost is the way to integrate the models and the miniatures into.
Well, you don't have
the
to
show.
pay a model builder if you're just doing it on the computer,
Well, that's true. I mean, that makes me think of one of the shows that I really liked, and one of the ones that I first noticed the computer rendering the models and stuff was Babylon 5.
Yes.
And it's funny when you see it, and it still holds up fairly well, the computer imagery, but an interesting note that to get a 1 minute shot, they would actually break up the animation.
Okay.
And so people were taking stuff home, and it's like, okay, you animate the first 20 seconds, and then I'll animate the next 20 seconds, and then you animate the next 20 seconds. And so they had to work on it just because the processing power to do what the directors had envisioned.
Right. And now
Wasn't
Babylon,
there.
I hate to admit this, but I never watched that show. Give me a little synopsis about that show, and for our fans that may have not have watched it and looking for a cool new show to watch.
Babylon 5 obviously future, but it was the 5th attempt at basically the UN in outer space.
Okay.
Earth had been in war with the Minbari, and all of a sudden they had stopped and created a treaty, and the Minbari were winning the war. And it follows these different characters, and they're different races, different species from all the aliens that are in the Babylon 5 universe. And it was a lot of political intrigue and deal making, and there was an overreaching plot. The species that was trying to take over the sea, and seeing how you've got people you're not sure exactly what their deal is, and there's a command structure, and it just all sorts of just interesting little parts that move. But they would references into different things. I know. The head of security, his name was Garibaldi, and I love that character because he was the tough, no-nonsense kind of guy. But one of his favorite pastimes was watching Looney Tunes cartoons.
Looney Tunes cartoons in space. Well, everybody loves Bugs Bunny. I mean, come on, right?
But that was one of the things. So it was a neat show. So if you get a chance to go check that out, there's only 5 seasons of it, which it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Right. So they actually wrap everything up. It's not like shows that tend to get canceled.
That's good.
There's resolution there.
Well, to tell you something else that I like, one of my all-time, and I'm the sound effects guy today, I guess, because I'm going to play a little bit of this.
This is Scotland. I am immortal, and I'm not alone. Now
recognize that, right?
There can be only one.
Right, there can be only one greatest television show of all time, and that is, in fact, Highlander. And yes, it came on at some obscure, stupid time in the middle of the night. But, for those of you who don't know, obviously, it is about a race of people that live, and they don't know that they do until they die the first time, and then they wake back up. They just can't be killed by normal means. The only way they can be killed is if another immortal cuts their head off, most of the time with a sword, because they're all old, right? They've lived in some time past, just like Duncan MacLeod, the Clown MacLeod, and played Adrian Paul, who I actually got to meet at a local con and Fanboy Expo. He was wicked awesome. And I was
met him twice. He's really cool guy.
I want to take his sword fighting class that he does sometimes at cons. I want to do that so bad, just because he's cool. And I remember how cool that was. And I think all of us watched it when we were, in high school and stuff, weren't we? I mean,
yes, we were.
Remember when we went to that computer or that Business Professionals of America competition, right? And we went to this place where they were having it, and we all bought, or a bunch of us bought wooden swords, and we had fights with them out in the parking lot of the hotel. That was awesome. Of course, all the too cool for school kids that were with us called us a bunch of sword freaks, so that's real funny. But of course,
hey, we got an A in Spanish because of that.
Yes, tell that story there. I wish we had some of the other guys on here to talk about it, but
maybe for another time.
Yes,
but we growing up and going to the high school and being into the same things because we're nerdy old men now. It's funny. We decided for a project, we could do a video project or I want to say like a oral presentation or something. So. And our Spanish teacher said it could be on anything. You just have to have. If you do a video, there has to be a story. And well, we decided to do Highlander in Spanish, and we choreographed fight scenes and everything with our wooden swords, and it was borrow a buddy's dad's video camera, and away we went, and it was horrible. I have recently found out I have an accent.
No.
Yes, and so when you're, I never will forget. It was solamente puedo ser un. There can be only one in Spanish. I don't know why that's stuck. But you were talking about meeting Adrian Paul at Fanboy, and I had met him in Atlanta at Dragon Con, and then had met him at Fanboy, and actually told him about us filming well, actually, my wife was the one that brought it up, so I had to tell the story.
Right. There you go. Of course.
She
Yeah. Happy wife.
took the chance. Yeah, took the chance to embarrass me good. She got me. But he got a kick out of it. He laughed. He said, "Well, I've seen episodes translated into Spanish." He said, "I've never actually seen anyone do anything in Spanish as Highlander." But he got a good laugh out of it. So. But it was a great show because I know you're like me. You're a history guy.
Too bad we didn't have that on video. If somebody still had the VHS cassette, if we could rig that up and record it on somebody's smartphone, man, that would be awesome to show him at some con. I really think that he'd get a kick out of it because he was super cool when I met him. He liked it was several years ago. My son was a lot smaller, and my boy had a little fidget spinner that looked like Shuriken, Ninja throwing stars, and he had bought it at the con. He was playing with it, and Adrian Paul was like, "Hey, that's really cool. That looks like a weapon. Can I see it?" And he was like playing with it with my son and stuff. So that was pretty cool. Oh yeah, and by the way, a little plug to my son on Twitter at OGCatCat. He is our that is his Twitter. He is our audio engineer, and he's the one that makes our goofy, horrible selves sound a little bit better. But yeah, man, Highlander was the thing, man. Love that history and all that kind of stuff. And you were talking about canceled shows before, Wes. I know, in fact, that you are probably the greatest fan of Firefly.
Oh, that's a show that it burned brightly. It didn't burn for long, but it burned very brightly. And dang it, Fox, if you had just left it alone, you had a diamond in the rough and you didn't know it.
I know, and I've seen that show, and I really, really liked it. And what I hated was, I hated when they made the film to try to tie everything in, and I just didn't care for it.
If you hadn't watched the show, there were parts of the movie that didn't really make sense. I mean, you're kind of getting a lot thrown at you in the film Serenity. I'm actually sitting here looking at it on the shelf as we speak. But the show was really well written. A lot of people didn't realize what Joss Whedon wanted to do was tell a Western in space.
Right.
So
it doesn't translate to everybody unless you really know that.
You're in the thick of it. They wanted you to get in hard and fast. Joss really wanted a slow burn. It was like an old Western, like The Gambler. I don't know if you remember that miniseries when we were growing up. Yeah. And it took its time to develop the characters and the story, and you kind of learned things as we went along very slowly, and you were able to digest everything that was happening. And Joss Whedon envisioned a 2-hour opening show. Really develop the worlds, the universe, these characters, what's going on. And Fox wanted to hit it hard and fast, and it really wasn't set up the way he wanted it to be, and they aired the episodes out of order.
Oh.
This is a show
that
where...
kills it.
This is a show makes sense to you if you watch them in order. If you just kind of start jumping around, you're like, oh, why is she doing this? And what's this guy's problem?
None of that makes sense.
Who are they? But it's a fun show. But I did get to finish all the signatures on my Firefly poster. I got Alan's at Cincinnati Comic Expo this last year, and I'm missing his Joss Whedon's, and that's probably never going to happen. So I'm going to get that one framed and put up on the wall. But that was a lot of fun getting those signatures. And speaking of signatures, I know that you were a fan of Battlestar Galactica and had been working on your cast signing.
Right. The reimagined series.
That was an interesting show. You want to talk about
Battlestar Galactica? I used to I binge watched everything. I watched it after it had finished, and plus the movies that were with it. And man, I really liked that show. And I found a poster because the first time I went to Dragon Con, I found out that Tricia Helfer and several of the other actors were going to be there from Battlestar. So I found a poster, and the poster's so cool. It is it's the Last Supper, from the Bible. But instead of Christ and the apostles, it's the characters from the show, all in the same poses. And so I've got it hung up in my man cave, and I've gotten the whole cast to sign it with the exception of just a couple of them. So that's pretty awesome, and I thought that was so cool. Other thing about there is it was neat. I got Tricia Helfer. She's the main antagonist in the show for a long time. One of the Cylons, and she was the first one that I got to meet that got to sign it. So she was super cool, other than being like 3.5 feet taller than I am. And so I go over there and get her to sign it. She was really nice, and I had a picture made with her, and so I sent a tweet out and was like, "Hey, this is super cool. I got to meet Six Battlestar Galactica," and tagged her in it, and posted the picture before I even looked at the picture. And I get a response from the actress, right? I mean, within just a few minutes, and her response is, "Come back and we'll take another picture. This time, don't close your eyes." And I looked at the picture. Cool. I looked at the picture, and I'm like, "Damn it! I did close my eyes." So I go back over there, and I walk back over there, and she goes, "Listen, open your eyes." And I'm like, "Yes, ma'am, absolutely, no problem. Please don't kill me." And so anyway, actually, I met almost those guys from that show, and they were all really super cool. So that kind of made me more of a fan of the show, even though I'd already seen it, because these guys and ladies will be very cool and really good with their fans. So I thought that was pretty cool. But man,
show I didn't get to watch a lot of.
You go back and watch it. I think you can get. I think most of it's free on Netflix or Prime or something. But it's a really well done show. Especially the first few seasons, they keep you on the edge of your seat constantly, because every time they're trying to run from the Cylons, right, and every time they kind of come out of light speed or whatever, man, they're right on them again, attacking them, and it's just like this constant marathon run for their lives.
Yeah,
so that's pretty cool. But man, those are some good shows, and I know there's a whole bunch more, and we'll revisit those on another show. I don't want to throw them all out at once, man, but those are pretty much some of my favorites. And you come up with some good ones, although Highlander and Battlestar are the absolute best. But still, those come out. Those are some pretty good ones.
You're half right on that.
Half right. So, what do you got next, man?
Well, since you caught me off guard last week with our rapid fire section, I'm gonna hit you back, buddy.
Let's do this.
Dun.
The Nerdy Old Men rapid fire question session.
Obvious one I got to start off with. Marvel or DC?
DC.
Favorite sci-fi movie?
Oh. Man, Total Recall.
Ooh. Favorite sci-fi actor or actress?
Adrian Paul, since we've been talking about him.
Okay, and last but not least, does pineapple belong on a pizza?
Absolutely, but only if it has ham.
I will accept your answer.
Yes.
You have passed, my son. Ding, ding,
I
ding,
win.
Ding, ding, ding.
Man, we're hoping next time. We said it didn't work out with our guest. We're thinking we're going to be able to get him on next week. I hope that's the case. We'll still keep it a bit of a surprise. I know we're getting a few listeners. We really appreciate that, man. Send us some tweets, send us some emails.
What is that Twitter handle there, Chad, that they can reach us at?
That Twitter handle to reach us at is at Nerdy Old Men. That's at Nerdy Old Men. And our email is nerdyoldmen@gmail.com. Nerdyoldmen@gmail.com.
If you've got any suggestions for the show, any topics you'd like us to discuss, feel free to reach out and let us know what you think of the show. If it's something you're interested in, we'd love to hear from you, and we really appreciate everybody.
Yeah, and I know Wes is gonna set an Instagram. Like I said before, we're gonna expand into the other social media so people can get a hold of us and things. So he's gonna run that when I run the Twitter, and I check the boring old email too. So reach out to us on those things. If you've got a business. If you're making cosplay stuff, or you're making dice bags or anything kind of stuff like doing artwork that applies to some of the stuff that we do, and you want a free place to talk about what you do, man, reach out to us. We'd love to have you on, talk to you about some stuff. Fair warning, you're going to hit with the Nerdy Old Men Rapid Fire question session. So you'll be on the hot seat, but that's really the only price that we ask of you is that, and spread the word about our stupid little podcast that we do here. So any of those things, we'd love to have you. And, man, I think that's pretty awesome. And I can't wait to see what, our nerdy old men brains can squeeze out for next time.
Yeah, it's so much fun to just get to sit and talk about things that we enjoy, and we hope that our listeners enjoy it, and just keep coming back, and we will try to come up with some good topics and just run the gambit of all things nerdy.
Yes, sir. So for my good old friend Redneck West, this is in fact the Bald-Headed Bastard Chad, and this has been the Nerdy Old Men Podcast. And remember, there can be only one.
Yeehaw.